As always, before we begin, we're going to do a quick check-in around the table. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Real Talk by Our Stories, Your Legacy. Here we are again, continuing with another episode in our Corona series. Another series about, again, real life conversation with our friends and our thoughts and our feelings, our triumphs, our woes as we're all living through these times. Even though we don't get to see each other in person, as often as we would like, we still have a blessing to get together online, and continue to have these conversations just to keep us all, healthy and in check and continue to discuss tough conversations. So in today's episode, we're going to answer 3 questions about how we're planning for future events during this still ongoing pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we are all living through these times, no matter where we are in the world, has and will continue to shock the world. And for many, it has compounded the growing sense of uncertainty they already felt in their lives. And as we hit 7 months into this new this new norm, this new journey, sometimes planning for the future, even if it's very simple as planning for the weekend, can sometimes feel a little impossible or feel a little anxious and make us feel a little anxious. So how are we planning for this uncertainty still? And those 3 questions that we're going to answer today is: 1, how have you been planning things during the pandemic? 2, do you think that just reacting, coming up with the spur of the moment plans, has that been detrimental during the pandemic? Or is that all we think we can do during these times is just play our future step at a time, play it by ear? And finally, the 3rd question: can we all learn to practice foresight to avoid this anxiousness or the uncertainty of planning for the future? So there you go. As always, before we begin, we're going to do a quick check-in around the table and introduce who's on tonight's episode. Zvon, how's it going, brother?
You know how it is. Same shit, different day every day. Yeah, long week for me, but it's been a good week so far. Just
Nice.
Taking it day by day and seeing what comes next in this crazy year. I mean, we got elections next week, so that is the crazy cherry on top of this crazy year. So yeah, we'll see.
I think I haven't felt this anxious about the public, the elections. I haven't felt this anxious about the public since the first lockdowns, back in April, May, when it was officially locked down. It's like, I don't know if I want to be caught out in public during these times because, it's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so we just got to continue to take care of ourselves. Thanks, man. Same shit every day. Tyler, how's it going with you, man?
It's going pretty well, man. Doing all right. Got a little bit of a headache right now, but I think that's just due to my lack of water intake today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crazy times. Like Zvon said, same stuff, different day. But like you also said, elections next week, kind of anxious about it. And for anyone who's listening to this episode, it is Sunday at this point. If you haven't, most things have already done it, but don't forget to do your stove and your microwave and all that stuff. It is daylight savings. Remember to fall back an hour. You gain an extra hour of sleep for a couple of days before your body gets used to it. But remember, it's fall back, daylight savings time today. So if you get confused when you look at your phone and then your stove, and it's different time, just know that's why.
That's a good reminder. Thanks for that, man. And so tonight, our good buddy, our good brother, Andrew can't make it tonight, but he'll try to join us on the next episode. So it's just going to be us 3 in the house today, us 3 from the Our Stories, Your Legacy team, going to move forward. So starting with the first question, I'm going to start with you, Zvon. 7 months into the C-19 pandemic, thinking about your future or just thinking about little plans, that's upcoming for you. How have you been planning for things during the pandemic?
For me, it's always been my plan before the pandemic in terms of like just taking care of personal stuff and a lot of side projects, personal projects, which could be like, my own like multimedia project, ranging from my multimedia projects to house projects and taking care of family at home. It's always been part of the plan. And then when the pandemic hit, it just never really stopped me. It's just I had to adjust in regards to like how I went out in public and got my supplies, did my thing, whatever. And I just, I just, like I said, I had to adapt. There's no stopping the pandemic. You can only really mitigate it.
Yeah.
And, hope it like dies out eventually or whatever, or like when folks get vaccinated, there's no stopping it. So,
yeah,
I mean, I could sit at home and bitch and complain and whine about it all day and whatever. But, at the end of the day, I'm still doing my own thing. I'm just taking care of myself. And folks will be like, oh, Zvon, you're selfish, whatever. It's not. If you're thinking about yourself and just taking care of yourself, it's not really being selfish, or at least like in a negative lens. It's just, I take it as is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a tough year, but what can you do? You got to persevere. So,
honestly, during these times, it's like, how can taking care of yourself and maybe your household and your loved ones be anything but selfish? It's kind of ridiculous during these times. You kind of have to be selfish, to kind of take care of yourself, because ultimately taking care of yourselves is protecting others around you when you go out, during the pandemic. You mentioned adaptability, adapting. Do you feel like it's been more difficult to go get your supplies or go out to get what you need to make sure that what you plan for the future goes smoothly?
I mean, once the state like kind of eased a little bit on restrictions where certain businesses were open again and whatnot, like I was able to just go in there and grab my stuff. The only difference really was just wearing a mask and I guess physically distancing yourself from people, which is quite hard to do in stores that are crowded. It's like, how do they regulate that? But whatever. So yeah, just simple adaptability. Whether or not I agree with like the mask thing or the physical distancing thing, I just do it out of respect for others, and so I don't get attacked and whatnot.
Right.
And mainly I do it for like the health of my mom at home. So I don't want to attract anything and whatever. So I don't know. I think people care a little too much about what others think, and yeah, people are just uptight. So I try not to be uptight. I try not to let that rub off on me. I just do whatever like the state recommends and not get attacked. Don't get arrested. Don't do stupid stuff. Just take it day by day. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like not as much has changed for you, especially during the pandemic.
No, other than being confined at home, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, mentally, yeah, that's been taxing on me, and I understand it's been taxing for a lot of folks. Like I always, I work closely with students and student affairs. Sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but
no. Go
understanding their mentals and their lack of being outside from being quarantined in their own homes. Tell them if you need someone like vent to and whatnot, or someone to just listen to you. My door is always open virtually. So, and I understand like classes can be like taxing, staring at a screen all day and whatnot, in the current climate and the politics behind COVID, wearing a mask and just politics in general. It's not something that you want to be seeing, hearing, and witnessing every day while you're stuck at home with just like screens. So stuff like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, man. Tyler, throwing it over to you, man. How have you been planning for things during the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, much like Zvon, I think there's a certain component of the planning that stayed the same. But I think once the pandemic kind of really became, a thing, and it became real, it, the planning was very cautious, I'll have to say, as far as like going out. It did give me a lot of time to really focus on like personal projects, the stuff that you say you're going to do or you plan on doing, but then you make an excuse to why not to do it, or you just get kind of too busy to do it. So lots of projects just around like my parents' house and just like working, like detailing my car and all that stuff that usually I don't really have time to do. Or if I get the time on like a weekend, I don't want to do it because, I just spent all week working. Who wants to do more work on the weekend kind of thing? So when that happened, it gave me an opportunity to really dive back into just the stuff that I kept saying I was going to get done, but I just never really got done. So I was able to accomplish a lot of that stuff. No excuses. Same with work too, just being able to catch up on things just because we just weren't in the office. We were working from home. So it gave us an opportunity to catch up on a lot of the things that you typically are a little behind on, whether that be, just paperwork, budgets, whatever, depending on where you're working. So that was kind of like the golden, I guess, the golden ticket or the golden opportunity of the whole pandemic there. At least in the beginning, there's only so much you can do once you like finish all your projects. You're like, all right, now I got to look for a new project or a new hobby or whatever, which, I mean, the pandemic definitely brought out in a lot of people. As far as like my plans and stuff, I think right before they called it like a full on pandemic, probably like a week, 2 weeks, maybe max, before that, I traveled to North Carolina, for like a wedding, and it was like, there was a scare there a little bit before I left. But then we were down there, it was all fine and dandy. And then as soon as we get back, then it's like, it goes into like a full blown pandemic. So for me, it was a lot of the things that planning wise, I think wasn't necessarily the planning. It was more so a lot of the things got canceled. Right. So as most of you know, who have listened or who know me personally, I'm an avid runner. I usually run in a handful, usually around 15 races a year, half marathon, whatever distance that may be. So a lot of those races, just because of the restrictions on how many people could gather in places, had to be canceled. So a lot of the things that I was going to do, take weekend trips, go stay at like a hotel and do all of this and then run and everything, kind of get canceled. And it in the words of kind of like what our intro is, kind of shocked the world in a way to where like, oh wow, we are literally tied down to be at home all the time now, just because we are trying not to spread the disease. And like Zvon said, for those who listen, whether you want to wear a mask or you don't like wearing a mask or whatever it is, not doing it at this point is just a little selfish, just because we're talking about the selfishness stuff. You kind of just have to do it to kind of appeal to other people, also to protect your loved ones. Like that was the biggest thing that I was afraid of during those early stages of the pandemic and quarantine and everything, was bringing it home to like my grandma or something, or my parents. Both my mother, words. My mother and my grandmother are both very like susceptible to the disease. So, you know, one's older age, one's had a surgery. She just had a surgery. So I didn't want to risk bringing that home. So, you know, just had to do what you had to do, wear a mask, try to protect yourself as much as possible, but also just kind of limit your time outside. I think for me, during the beginning stages of the pandemic and a little bit into the summer, I was just going about it very, very like cautiously in the fact that, you know, planning everything out when I went to go out. Like I wouldn't just go out if I needed one thing. If I was going out, I was getting a number of different things, just so I didn't have to be out there too long and, you know, risk exposure to whatever and whatever. So definitely had to plan my things out when I was going on just trips to the grocery store, or brave the crowds at Costco as people were rushing the doors like it was a freaking apocalypse, and grabbing, of all things, all the toilet paper. You'd think the food would go first just because there was a food shortage and people panicked on that. But the first thing people hoarded too was toilet paper and paper towels. So trying to find paper towels and toilet paper at the beginning of this pandemic was just ridiculous. Still a joke now. Like people are just getting through half of what they bought in March. And it's now 7 months in. So
yeah.
So it's kind of funny, but you know, that's kind of how like, that's how my planning of things have been going on towards like this back end of the pandemic so far. Just because we know that this is going to last a while, but toward the back end of it, definitely have been like obviously planning things accordingly with other people. Like, hey, you know, make sure that we're all good. I know you haven't gone anywhere, but maybe we should get tested if we are going to meet up and do this or whatever that may be. And just kind of making sure that we keep each other healthy. So just things to consider, you know.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do want to touch on one thing because, you know, us being a close friend of yours, and maybe for our listeners who don't know you too much, Tyler is a avid runner, you know, and it's one of those things where you guys know me as an exaggerator sometimes, but I'm not exaggerating when I say it seems like Tyler runs like at least a half marathon every month and a marathon like every other month. You know what I mean? Here's one interesting thing before we jump on to the next question. It seems like, you know, for like years, you had this set plan of going to these races, planning, you know, in different cities around the country, different states, and you had plans to like book a weekend trip, you know, yearly. You know, you travel like very often. Now, when the pandemic hit, you know, when it comes to racing, tell us like how you kind of kept your hobby going, but without traveling to different states or as often as you used to do.
Yeah. Just because like all in-person racing got canceled. So what a lot of races did during this time was they just took their race and made it like a virtual run, which, I mean, for me, virtual runs, I'm like, it's a virtual run. Not really a race, but kind of going out and just running the distance during that time frame or that day to you know, just keep going. There was a group, I would say back in May, there was a challenge that a bunch of like runners did put together, kind of headed by one person. And what it was like there was an entry fee to it, but the majority of that entry fee went to a donation to a charity. But what it was kind of a challenge to get as many miles as you could during that month, and obviously doing strength conditioning and your injury prevention training and stuff. So, you know, they would post videos just to make sure that you were doing your stretches and strength conditioning, all that stuff. So That was kind of the thing, kind of running with other people, like virtually, I guess, would be checking in with a group. But I also ran, with my dad. Sometimes my sister would go on walks and that kind of stuff. So kind of using the motivation of others and just kind of going out with, the people that you're kind of quarantined with definitely helped that. Because, as a lot of people say, even runners, they can attest to it. The hardest part of running is literally getting up and going outside to do it. That's really the first step, is just walking out the door to go do it. So when you have the motivation of other people kind of like cheering you on in that regard, even though you're running by yourself or if you're running with somebody else, trust me, running with somebody else over a long period of time for distance makes those miles go by way quicker and it's way easier to do. But that's kind of what I use as my motivation to kind of continue that hobby, is kind of go on daily runs. During that month, I ran every day, which is not something that I would usually do. Usually run 3-4 times a week, but I ran all 31 days of May. Got an extra medal for running all 31 days, called the Streaker Challenge, and kind of from there, kind of just kept it going. Pretty much ran every day from the end of April until the smoke hit in early September. And then I had to take a break just because I couldn't escape the smoke. I don't have a treadmill, and at that point, gyms were still closed. So I had a pretty good streak where I did at least a mile every day for that whole stretch, just kind of personal challenge. And yeah, just supporting others and all that stuff. So
yeah. No, awesome, man. Yeah, I mean that kind of the reason why I asked that, it brings up kind of a bigger point that kind of relates to a lot of our conversations that we had on other recordings during this Corona series. Like for example, one big hobby that you love and motivates you to do year in and year out is running. Going to running races, and when the pandemic, hit and it affected some of these hobbies, especially outdoor hobbies, you found in your community of runners found ways to continue to keep others inspired, like doing virtual runs, or you brought out other friends that you've been family that you've been quarantining with, and then just doing walks together, to keep each other motivated. It kind of brings us back to the idea of gaming, how we talked about in many previous episodes. Gaming was always big, but now when the pandemic hit, it kind of forced newcomers or existing gamers to kind of continue to grow community. And so, to wrap it up, it seems like when it comes to planning during the pandemic, as humans, when we lose or when we take a hit to a certain hobby that we're usually used to, and this could be on any level of community. It doesn't have to be running or playing games. It could just be, getting together with your, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, neighborhood PTA to do a book club. I don't know. I sound so old saying that. But, little stuff like that. You as humans, we get together to plan a new way to continue hobbies that we love. So I love that. Moving on to the second question, Zvon, what do you think about during this pandemic? Like, let's say when emergencies come up, or just something that just kind of derails our plans, or maybe a spur of the moment friend who needed to connect with you or something. Do you feel like reacting or just going with the spur of the moment plans is detrimental during the pandemic, or do you think that's all we can do?
Honestly, it's tough because obviously it depends on the situation. For me, along with just taking it as is, like I said, there's no stopping the pandemic. It's just something we have to live with for for God knows how long. But when it comes to like, folks come up to me for something, I just do what I've always continued to do. I just sit and listen. And if folks need help with something, I will provide help at the best of my ability. So, I mean, I don't have much to say to that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it kind of goes back to that thing where we all kind of have to be selfish during the pandemic. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to reject plans as best as we can that makes us feel safe and comfortable. And I think that's all we can do. I don't think, personally for me, I don't think from what we talked about in the first question, you can't really react to plans anymore. You can't have a friend who comes up and be like, "Hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Let's go to the movies." Or, like, it's different these times. It's I think this question per se, you can't really do spur of the moment stuff anymore. I mean, would you agree with that, Zvon?
Yeah, exactly. It kills a lot of the spontaneity that was associated originally when things were pre-COVID, before COVID even happened. So, and it's now that it happened, it's out of our control, and and alluding to what Tyler mentioned earlier to the first question, like plans get canceled, things got canceled, and weddings. There were a lot of weddings that us three like had to go to this year, like special gatherings and whatnot, whatever events that were planned for this year, like they all got canceled, and sadly, you just got to take it as is, and obviously empathize with the folks who are who were like deeply affected by the couples that were supposed to get married and couldn't have like the big ceremony that they originally had planned and whatnot, or anything that got postponed and canceled. It's just you feel for them, and at the same time it's like what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's tough, and it's gotten to the point where like, I'm not going to go deep in the rabbit hole, but it has like gotten political. Like folks are like, do you want to be free, or do you want to continue to be confined in your own home? Do you want to be under lockdown? So, and that in tie with elections is like a big question.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot of good arguments about it. It's like, yeah, you can be safe, but you could still be safe, but you won't have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there are folks who are just they're creating their own spur of the moment, regardless of what the restrictions say. So, I mean, I really have nothing to say to that. It's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not judging you. I mean, a lot of people are. They're like, you're part of the problem. You're contributing to the problem. Whatever. Like I said, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but folks are just they're. I think it's come down to that point, which I foresaw, like even when this all started 7 months ago, at least for us, people are just gonna do whatever eventually, because folks have gone insane. So, and that's understandable.
Right.
I'm gonna continue doing what I want to do. They continue doing what they want to do, and yeah, just how it is.
Yeah. One thing I love about what you said, and you say this often, because it comes up often, the being spontaneous is truly impacted. I don't want to say dead, but it's laying dormant, like, because I remember, Zvon, you were big on sometimes that spontaneous thing of just you wanting to just get up and go to the coffee shop, or go to the library or something, just to like get away and get out in public, even if you're not hanging with anybody. We can't really do that anymore. It kind of begs the question, like, we really have to think out what we want to do, whether it's whether we're planning, whether we're consciously thinking about it or not. We're really planning every part of our future, even if it's just an hour ahead. But it's one of those things where when it comes to spontaneous plans with other friends or gatherings or and I use gathering lightly, but to like get together with loved ones, it's not there anymore. But it depends on how you like it. Like, some people love less of meeting up with folks. But 7 months in, can you say, has this really it's been mentally taxing, Tyler, I'm gonna throw it all over to you, man. This is a kind of a tough question, but to kind of like get into the meat of it, like Zvon and I were talking about. I mean, do you feel like you can do spur of the moment plans during the pandemic?
I think it just depends on what the spur of the moment plans are, honestly. I know I have found myself to be, I mean, there's all that spontaneity. Sometimes it is nice to just kind of go to a coffee shop or, do whatever. But even with the pandemic almost kind of taking away your normal routine, and I say routine, like doing whatever, but then spontaneity is also part of that routine at times, just because, it's like, it's just like, I feel like going to do something, so I'm going to go do it, I think during this time, it is a little bit harder to do spur of the moment things. But I have definitely found myself doing spur of the moment things. But it's mostly just like, I think that has to do with just being kind of, I say trapped in quotes, but trapped inside for a while. So like, during the summer, there was definitely times where like, I'll just hop in the car and we would just take a ride, just take a road trip, not necessarily having a destination, but just kind of driving around and, driving to a park, if there's no one in that area of the park, just kind of sit outside in that park, have at that point, have your masks in your hand or in your pocket or whatever it was, but in case anyone came over. But that was the most like spontaneous thing that I would do, is just like, hop in the car and it's like, hey, let's go for a drive. We might drive for an hour, we might drive for 2 hours and just stop somewhere and, for a few minutes or however long it might be, and then come back. You're still kind of at that point trapped in a car, but it kind of serves like a purpose as far as like, going on a road trip or something and just kind of getting out of the place that you've been for so long, your home and whatnot. So in that regard, I think it wasn't too hard doing like spur of the moment stuff, but any spur of the moment stuff with like a friend or something, just like, yo, I'm like right up the street from you. You want to go grab coffee or something? Like, obviously you couldn't do that at any point. I know, like, it took a couple of days at one point. Like, I talked to Zvon and I was like, hey, we just baked cookies. We are safe. We are not sick. We're going to come drop these off for you. Or I think it was cookies. Pretty sure it was cookies. Or was it cake? Can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was like, it was banana bread and cupcakes.
Yes, cupcakes and banana bread. So it was one of those things. Like, obviously that was planned, kind of spontaneous, but at the same time, it was also Zvon's birthday. So we were just like, well, we're not sick. We haven't left the house in probably about a month or so, or whatever it is at this point. So let's just bake something and say, hey, if you're available, let's meet up and drop this off. We just dropped it off, and yeah, so it's been like that. So it's probably the most spontaneous stuff that I've done. But as a nation, I would say the spontaneity is just, that's I don't know. I don't know if it's spontaneous or if it was still planned at that point, like large crowds gathering, just being like, it wasn't really spontaneous, I guess. It was more just planned vacation time or whatever it might be, where people just rush to the beach. And there's thousands of people on the beach, and then you get reports of new cases popping up because people went to the beach. So it's just one of those things. I think on spontaneous things like that, it's kind of hard, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, it seems like from what I'm hearing is in terms of being spontaneous, meeting up with friends like on the whim, for the most part, like, hey, I'm up the block, let's go get something to eat, or let's go out to the movies or something like that, has been pretty much cut. Where in terms of what you're describing in terms of being spontaneous, it's more of personal reasons now. Like, I'm gonna jump in my car where I'm pretty much secluded anyways and drive with the windows down and get some fresh air, catch some sun, or go to a park and social distance myself, go to sit down in an empty spot. So it seems like now we're shifting more to personal spontaneous things and less of you know social spontaneous things. And that's kind of warranted. It's kind of hard for us to just gather as a big group nowadays just on a whim. So, and Tyler, let me start with you, moving on to the third question. Do you feel like that we can prepare or practice some sort of foresight, or how do we avoid feeling anxious and certainty of planning for the future?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's the biggest thing is it's affecting a lot of people in the sense like, man, I can't plan for the future because we don't know what tomorrow or next week or next month is going to look like, because we still are in a pandemic and there is still disease and whatnot, flu virus out there. But I mean, think back, or actually just not even back. I don't know what I'm saying there, but just if you really just sit back and think about it, tomorrow is not even guaranteed in a normal day, even without a pandemic,
Yeah.
So you kind of have to just go about it. I know the pandemic is here for the foreseeable future. So it makes it hard to plan certain things because it's going to be different. But we can definitely practice just like foresight and all of that stuff, just because you've been doing it already. You've at the beginning of a pandemic, people have planned their stuff out. Like, okay, I need to go to the grocery store. I need to make a list. I need to go get in and get out. I'm not trying to be there for 30 minutes walking down each aisle. I need to get in, get out as quickly as possible so I can just not be around people.
Yeah.
A couple months in, 3 months in, it's like, okay, I can go to the store. I can get these things. But if I happen to forget something, I can just go to another store real quick. Whatever, during the summer, it's like, oh man, I really want to go do this. Maybe, okay, I can plan a week out. I can plan 2 weeks out now. I can just try to figure it out. Because at that time people had become accustomed to the whole, uncertainty thing. I think that's what a lot of people kind of get caught up on is like, well, everything's so uncertain. The future is uncertain with the virus. I don't know what I should plan or if I can really plan it because of the virus might cancel it. But it's not any different from just a normal day-to-day without a virus. It's like, yes, your future is uncertain. You are trying to strive and fight for what you want in life and whatnot. So you just have to kind of take a step back and really look at it holistically and realize that virus or no virus, you still have to plan things out. Yes, it takes the spontaneity out of things, but you still have to sit down and kind of plan what you're doing, what am I going to do? I'm still going to go grocery shopping at the end of the week. Let me still put a list together. I might want to go take a road trip. It's not spontaneous at this point, kind of, but 3 weeks from now, it doesn't look like I have to do anything that weekend. I don't have to go run or go work out or go, I don't know, wrap presents for something. I don't know. It's something random like that. But, 3 weeks, I'm like, I'm going to go take a drive. To where? Not quite sure. Maybe a mountain. Maybe I'll go hike. But, people started planning out further and further into the future. And I think that's the big thing. I think a lot of people were anxious about it. A lot of people were nervous about it just because of the uncertainty. But, like I said, with or without the virus, there's going to be uncertainty in your future anyways.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to consider for virus or not is just kind of, taking all the things into consideration, just like, coming up with different scenarios. Like, if I do this, what am I going to do? If I do this, what's going to happen? It's pretty much what it is. And then you kind of just have to monitor and accept it, just like you would in your day-to-day life. I know I'm saying this because it's easy for me to say, just because I work in a field where it's events. There is never a day where everything goes smoothly. There is a certain level of uncertainty there at all points of time. So you kind of just have to monitor the situation and accept it. You have to accept the uncertainty that is pretty much now the norm of things. Now and even before, but you got to be humble. I think that's what it is. It's just like being humble and just kind of accepting what it is.
Right.
You can't control certain things. You can control what you can control. And if it's out of your control, don't stress about it. Just go about it. Plan B, plan C, all the way down to plan XYZ,
Yeah. No, good points. Yeah. I mean, it's virus or no virus, to really combat anxieties is to kind of think it through and plan it as best as we can. So yeah, good point on that, man. Chucking the ball over to Zvon. Take it home, man. Like, I'm going to spin this question a little bit differently, simply for you. What are some of your techniques? How do you avoid being anxious or feeling uncertain of the future? And has the pandemic changed that or made you adapt to it in any way?
Well, I kind of want to go back to what Tyler mentioned, like virus, no virus. We've always naturally planned and prepare ourselves for the uncertain, right? I say, like, we gotta prepare for the unexpected, and whatever that may be, right? That's like a whole can of worms to open. Like, some folks buy guns to prepare themselves for government tyranny, riots, violent militias that come out of nowhere and take over like neighborhoods and whatnot. Some people, at least now, like, because of the COVID virus locking down a majority of the gyms in the nation, folks have bought gym equipment and started their own home gyms. And they've prepared that way. I myself am like one of those folks, but like, I've always planned to have a home gym in my garage. It's crazy. Like, coincidentally, I was able to get a majority of it built prior to lockdown, so I was very lucky there. But I digress. And like, folks are now preparing for like another wave of like a spike in cases and deaths, and that we're going to go into another lockdown. So folks are, at least, for example, in the education field, folks are prepping their curriculum for like the next semester, next quarter, to be virtual and what they're going to do and whatnot, as well as like the students, like, they're preparing themselves mentally and I guess socially to handle another virtual learning curriculum. So we're always practicing foresight, I'd say. But we're just not always conscious about it until something really impacts us. For example, Corona. And it's definitely eye-opening. So prep yourselves for the unexpected, whatever that may be. And we don't know what's coming up next. We really don't. And whatever happens, and we just got to take it for what it is. Honestly, it's just so much stuff has happened. So many things continue to happen.
Yeah.
And it shocks us because we're not prepared, right? Like, oh my gosh, I was not mentally prepared for that, or I was not physically ready. I wasn't stocked up and whatnot. It's tough. You don't know. That's I think that's one of, honestly, the most intriguing things about life. You just don't know what's going to happen, but you continue to live it anyways, right? You continue to take it day by day, and there's no solution, really. There is no right or wrong way in terms of like what path you take, what choices you make. I mean, yeah, there's bad moral choices and there's good moral choices. It's up to us to learn that and to know our rights and wrongs. But in terms of like, I mean, what works best for you in terms of like success and how you grow and develop and how you live your life, there's no set path. It's really just how like society and your family, friends like construct those ideas in your head and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think as long as you uphold your values and your convictions and what you believe in, and there's no solution. It's just you plan for yourself, and that's all you can do. But you can't plan for what happens in the world, really. It's tough. You can only do little things to, I guess, defend yourself, wherever that may be, whether it's buying guns, buying a mask. You just never know. So
yeah. No, awesome, man. I mean, I love what you said at the end to kind of wrap up our episode today. I mean, you're right. This pandemic, it really tests our will, at one level or another. All of us are on the same page where we don't see the solution anywhere near the horizon soon enough. But all we can do is take it step by step, day by day. And regardless if there was a virus or no virus, we don't have the answer for everything in life. But what we do have is, like you said, Zvon, continue to believe in yourself, continue to believe in your own convictions, and just keep moving forward. Keep planning, keep expecting the unexpected. But if you believe in your own convictions, believe in your own ability and staying true to yourself, you always find a way to survive and plan to move forward. So, I really appreciate that sentiment, because I think that's very true. The pandemic is testing our convictions, is testing our will to keep pushing forward. And as humans, I think we all have that ability to hit rock bottom only to spring back up to, be as successful as we always know to be. So, I appreciate those comments. I think that's really huge. And, so I think that's a perfect note. I think for all of our listeners out there, just know that you're not alone in this. We're all together, and all we can do is continue to take care of ourselves, continue to spiritually and even physically or mentally support one another, and just keep trucking through. Life is unexpected. Whatever you have planned for the future, just know that you're always going to consistently plan to be yourself and plan to survive. So, as always, we appreciate y'all for listening. And, I guess, thank you again. This is Our Stories, Your Legacy, another episode in the Corona series. Take these questions, talk about it with yourself, or take these questions, talk about it with a family member or a friend, and see what kind of answers you come up with, what kind of things, jogs your thoughts and triggers your answers. And so we appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening to another round of Our Stories, Your Legacy. We'll be back again soon enough. And we're out.
Later.